we're going to start with some breaking news just into us about the Queen's funeral that is going to be held on Monday. Let's go straight to our royal correspondent now, Rhiannon Mills, to get more on this. Rhiannon, what can you tell us?
Plans that the Queen during her life was heavily consulted on, and on Monday we will finally see those put into practice on the streets of central London, and subsequently also moving on to Windsor. We are going to see the full military spectacle of a state funeral. Her family will again be involved in the procession. There'll be a 2-minute silence to end a funeral service at Westminster Abbey that everyone across the country is going to be asked to be involved in. And eventually the Queen will then be transferred to Windsor, where she in many ways will be reunited to be buried with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. So if we run you through some of the details that we've had through in literally the last hour. The Queen's children are going to keep a vigil at the lying in state where we currently saw those pictures of the Queen's coffin that's happening at Westminster Hall. That vigil by the Queen's children, so the King and his 3 siblings, will take place on Friday night. Then if we move on to Monday, her family are going to be heavily involved in the funeral procession, which will see the Queen's coffin moved from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey for that full state funeral. To end the service, there is going to be a 2-minute silence, which the entire congregation, of course, will mark, but also people across the country and across the Commonwealth are also being asked to use to pay their respects. The coffin will then be moved from Westminster Abbey through central London, taking a very similar route to the one that we saw it take yesterday as the Queen was moved from Buckingham Palace all the way to Westminster Hall, with the coffin eventually then from Admiralty Arch being moved on by road to Windsor Castle, where the Queen will be involved in a burial service where she, in essence, will be reunited with Prince Philip in a private burial service that only the family will be involved in. Now, in terms of some of the timings, if you're trying to plan what you're going to do on Monday when it comes to watching those proceedings, we know that at around 10:35, the coffin will be moved from Westminster Hall. Around 10:52, it will arrive at Westminster Abbey. So the service for the funeral will start at around 11 a.m. At around 11:55, that is when we'll hear the last post sound, and that 2-minute silence will then take place. A procession will then set off, as I explained, right the way through central London, which will take the Queen's coffin up Constitution Hill, where from the gun carriage, her coffin will then be transferred to the State Hearse, which of course we saw when she was moved from RAF Northolt to Buckingham Palace, and the car will then transfer her to Windsor. In Windsor, a more intimate service will take place at St George's Chapel, of course, where Prince Philip's funeral took place, with members of the household being invited to that, as well as members of the family also being involved, and members of the family will also be involved in the procession when it comes to taking the coffin to St George's Chapel. However, at the end of that service, the Queen's coffin will be lowered into the vault, and at that point, the cameras, in a way, will be asked to retreat, because at the end of the day, at about 7:30 in the evening, there will be a private burial service involving the King and members of the royal family. The Queen will be buried alongside the Duke of Edinburgh in the King George VI Chapel.